Hello and welcome to today's episode of Platinum Talks Wealth. Emmy-nominated journalist Jennifer Rogers Markwell changed gears in her television career when she realized the need to help women make sense of investing. She regularly hosts educational workshops to empower women and others to take charge of their financial future. Now, join your host, Platinum Wealth Management President Jennifer Rogers Markwell, as she leads us into the world of money memories, money infidelities, and how these can mold our relationship with our personal finances as adults. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hi, and thanks so much for joining us in the Platinum Talks Wealth podcast. I'm Jennifer Rogers Markwell, and I'm joined by Matt Enyedi. Matt, thank you so much for making time today.
Hello, Jennifer. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so super excited to have you on. And I always ask the first big question, tell us all about you and why you do what you do.
Well, that's a big question, and hopefully I can answer in a way that is somewhat interesting. So I work for a company called LPL Financial, which you know well. We work together.
Yes.
And we support more than 30,000 independent financial advisors responsible for providing success and ultimately making folks' dreams come true across 6 million American investors. So I've been here for 22 years, from a pretty startup level company to a Fortune 300 publicly traded company, and seen a lot of change through that time and got to be a part of it too. And today what I do is I'm managing director of client success. And my job is to do just that, help our clients, help folks like you, Jennifer, successfully solve for the needs and challenges of their businesses so that you all have the freedom, the flexibility, and the capabilities and bandwidth to help the investors you serve every day. And sounds a little corporate, but it's got a lot of meaning behind it too.
I always like to say LPL is the best platform for us to lean into as a business owner, as Platinum Wealth Management, so we can better serve our clients.
And that's probably why I'm inspired to do what I do, Jennifer. And you and I get to talk about these things all the time. But sure, I spend a lot of time in meetings and working on P&Ls and thinking about organizational design and talking to boards of directors. But the reality is, and I know my colleagues feel the same way, we know that every day, the folks and institutions that we serve are trying to make the American dream come true. And every time we have a new advisor join us, every time one of those advisors adds a new client to their business, it's one more family, one more community that we get to help. And so many folks suffer from financial insecurity, from financial illiteracy. Every day that you go out there, well, that gives me a great deal of comfort knowing that this world that we live in is one step closer to being whole.
It's a big deal. It's a very big deal.
That's what I
Grateful to
say to
be a
you all
part
the
of it.
time. Yeah.
Completely. Well, so you've also launched a pretty awesome podcast, which I would love you to share kind of more about that.
Yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun, inspired by people like you who are out there talking to your constituents, to the folks who, you connect with every day. We thought the same thing could be true for us. We have recently launched a new brand called What If You Could? And it's really the story about the questions you ask your clients every single day. What if you could retire early? What if you could buy that dream house? What if you could provide that education for your grandchild? We know that that's the type of planning questions you ask. So we started thinking, well, what if we could ask similar questions to our clients? What if you could build that business? What if you could bring on more advisors? What if you could buy that property down the street and set up the practice of your dreams? And from that, our marketing team actually came to me and they're like, Matt, what if we could add a voice to this process? What if we could add a voice to this idea and start a podcast? And I thought that sounded like a lot of fun. And they said, let's take that theme. So the podcast is called If You Could with Matt Enyedi. I'm joined by my co-host, Taryn Huguet. And what we do is try to unwrap and unwind what's happening in the financial markets and try not to go so kind of expected as far as here's the markets, here's the economics, here's what the Fed is saying, but more about the stories behind entrepreneurs who build businesses like you have, or try to understand certain dynamic changes like artificial intelligence and how they're actually not disintermediating humanity, but they might be creating more need for humanity than ever. or bring in third parties. I got to speak to Lieutenant Melissa Stockwell just last week about her story being the first female to lose a limb in combat in Iraq, and how she turned this incredible tragedy into the beginning of an unbelievable journey where she became one of the most decorated Paralympic athletes in U.S. history, and get inspired by a story about just getting to the starting line. So it's been a lot of fun. I am not nearly as seasoned as you are, and we are learning every day, but it's starting to connect with folks. And as long as it's doing that, then we'll keep doing it.
I think it's amazing how you hear people's stories. Again, same with me, right? Every time we do a podcast, there's always such a unique story that you learn from. And hopefully everybody listening is learning from as well. I feel like if we can continue to lift one another and all learn from another, well, I mean, the world would be a better place.
No question. No question.
So, did you always want to work in finance? Was that always your goal? How did you end up where you're at now? Like, what did that look like? Were you 5 and you're like, this is what I want to do?
No, it wasn't. I think probably when I was 5, I wanted to be a lawyer or a professional football player. And I was going down that path. And it's a funny story how it all worked out. I was kind of two things happened all at once. One was I interned while I was at school with a foundation called the Junior Seau Foundation. He was a very famous football player back in the day, and he was here, played for the San Diego Chargers, where I went to school at the University of San Diego. And so I was going down that path, and was connected to the organization that managed his money and a bunch of professional athletes' money. So I was starting to get connected to it that way. At the same time, my mom, who was a lifelong school teacher, still to this day, 77 years old, teaches, she was working for a technology company that provided ed tech. And this was the late 90s, and it was the dot-com boom. And she was just this really cool educator who was working for a company creating content via technology or via computers to teach kids and young adults different educational needs. And the company went public, and she's a founder of this company. And next thing you know, she has, significant assets in Reg 144 stock that she had no idea what she was supposed to do with. And every day, because they had .com at the end of the company name, the value of that stock kept going up, whether it was pets.com or her company was called lightspan.com. It just kept going up. And she was like, Matt, I'm a school teacher, and all of a sudden I have all this money and I have no idea what to do. And I don't understand this restricted stock and what it means. So going down these two paths, I got really interested in helping her and trying to understand what she could do. The long and short of that one is the dot-com bubble burst. A lot of that paper money became worthless. And I started to see that had she been a little more savvy, had she known some things that other folks known, she might have been able to actually take advantage or be able to realize some of the value of that asset before the bubble burst. But by the time she was able to get access to it, it had lost most of its value. And that started to get me really interested in markets and really interested in understanding how you might help people through really a foreign language. I mean, how many school teachers and plumbers and air traffic controllers are out there who have these pensions and 401ks and access to corporate stock, and they don't know how to manage it. And more often than not, they're frightened by it. So that was probably part one. Meanwhile, I graduate from college, and the money management firm that managed the assets for Junior Seau hired me. And while I wasn't in a financial capacity or in a financial services capacity, I was working for the firm actually recruiting professional baseball players, and cold calling and cold knocking and going to high school games and going to college games and going to Arizona Fall League or going to spring training and trying to talk to young athletes and suggest to them that they needed help with the asset management of this contract that they were about to receive, and see if they were interested in working with us. So those two things came together all at once. This understanding, this kind of passion for markets, this understanding that people needed help, and then my first job out of college kind of connected those two dots.
That's a super, super unique story. I feel like I definitely resonate with some of that too. For me, just coming from a career path of television, transitioning into finance to help my grandma after my grandpa passed, and not planning this out for myself by any means, but here I am. But I feel like I'm making such a tremendous difference along the way.
Yeah. No, look, I told you it inspires me. I don't say that lightly. I know how scary finances can be, how scary thinking about retirement, or, when markets get a little funky, how do you make sure that people make good decisions? Because we as Americans, like the old line, right? We like to buy everything on sale except for stocks. And we like to sell everything high except for our assets. And psychologically, and I'm traumatized by growing up. Most of us did not
Yeah.
grow up with abundance. We have, some of us, been lucky enough and worked hard enough to achieve it, but it doesn't change necessarily our experience or relationship with money. And we need help. I need help, Jennifer, from people like you.
I'm here to help always, Matt, always. I mean, that transitions beautifully into, money memories. When you think of a money memory, and I feel like it's always such a unique thing because everyone has a story, no matter what walk of life, who you are, where you're from. What was your first memory of money, either as a younger person or teenager, that really helped mold your relationship to money now as an adult?
Yeah, my relationship with money is one that's changed a lot over time. Because I said I did not grow up with abundance. We grew up with scarcity. I was raised by a single mom and three sisters. And my mom was a very hardworking, highly educated woman. Heck, she was getting her master's degree while my older sister and I were, I was in diapers. My older sister was 4 years old. And we did not have a lot, but we were a family full of love, and it was a big Irish Catholic family. So we had family all over the place. And we did not have, and my mom had a funny relationship with money herself. I actually always remembered her whole thing was whenever she lost a job, we'd go buy something um,
Hmm.
as a way, a forcing function to go get the next job. And basically, if we've got $1,000 in savings and I've lost my job, we're going to go spend half of it on something fun. She'd go take us on I was 5 years old. We went on a trip to Europe. I think we had like $10. We camped in tents and jumped on trains, and we came back. We had nothing. She's like, okay, I've got about 2 weeks to go get another job to make things meet. So we were always kind of on the edge of it. And there was always the concern, for me at least, that we were going to be in trouble and not be able to make ends meet.
You are listening to the Platinum Talks Wealth Podcast.
Hey, it's Jennifer. I wanted to take a quick break to remind you that you are worthy to have a seat at the table when it comes to money and your finances. We, both me and my team at Platinum Wealth Management, want to meet you where you are, whether you're starting out, starting over, or have been investing for years. Reach out to us at platinumwealth.net or call us at 775 717 0001. We'd be honored to help.
And now, back to the podcast.
And that has certainly shaped how I think about money, and how, when I first was on my own and making sure that I had enough money to pay the rent and buy food and have some fun, that it probably wasn't the healthiest relationship, if you want to know the truth, because I reassessed my financial means literally every single day. Take my gross income, divide it by the number of days left in the month, minus my bills, and then figure out how much money I could spend every day, and then reassess every single day. And it was an exhausting way to live, but it's how I gave myself the comfort that I was going to be okay the next day. I could not live the way my mom did. It was too uncomfortable for me. And I definitely steered the other direction.
That's a full-time job in itself, just managing your own day-to-day budget.
Yeah, look, when my wife first met me, I think I nearly exhausted her, because she was like, "Bro, that is no way to live." And she's taught me a lot about, making sure that, yes, you want to live within your means, but you also want to live to your means, whatever that means for you. And I think a lot of us have trouble doing that. Look, I grew up in a household where if there was mold on the cheese, you cut the moldy part of the cheese off, threw that away, and finished the cheese. My wife has explained to me that you throw the whole block of cheese away now. And that's a learning for me. And I look, it's actually freeing once you can move past the fear of scarcity and live into a world of abundance. And you definitely shouldn't squander it. And I think you should do something productive with it too. But you got to enjoy it a little bit also.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing. I'm also from the moldy cheese realm myself, from a Irish Catholic family as well. But my husband laughs at me and he's like, "What are you doing?" Like,
Yeah.
same balance there. So we also talk about financial infidelities, which that can be a big, scary, hairy word for a lot of folks. What's a financial infidelity that you've either experienced or that you've witnessed that you think others listening could learn from?
Yeah. I have one that shaped me it has shaped me throughout my entire career and through my entire life. And it goes back to that first job I had. Um, so I was working for this professional sports management organization, and they were managing millions and millions of dollars for all these young professional athletes whose entire focus was on their career and making sure they were the best at what they do. And it turned out that the president of the company was embezzling millions of dollars from our
Ooh.
clients. It turned out that he had built a pretty serious Ponzi scheme. And every time he took in a new client, he would pay off the past clients on their investments and continue to spin this thread to the point where ultimately the business was shut down. The FBI, U.S. attorney came in, and it was a terrible time. I'm 23 years old, and I am not understanding exactly what's going on and what's happening. And I'm talking to these young clients who are not understanding what's happening and why, this person who they put all this trust into had done them wrong. And so the biggest lesson certainly I learned there was one, you got to really be thoughtful about who you're engaging with. Was an incredibly charismatic man who convinced a lot of us, employees and clients alike, that this was all on the up and up, and it was a really well-run establishment, and clearly it was not. But what I learned was the the threat or the kind of negative impact of entitlement on people. And that word has taught me so much is soon as you have the feeling of entitlement, it sets you up to do a lot of things wrong. And he
Mm.
clearly felt he was entitled to do with these assets, do with these people's money as he thought was best, convinced himself that he was going to do something good with it and return the proceeds to the people. That's truly what I think he believed. But he did it through this lens or this sphere of entitlement that allowed him to make some really unsavory decisions that hurt a lot of people. And so I immediately thought to myself, I want to be in this business, actually not less, but more, because this is what's happening when people who are unscrupulous, and there are plenty of them, live inside, they're not the norm, they're the exception, but they're out there. And they're hurting people who are trusting the thing that they're most dependent on and oftentimes most frightened of, which is their finances. And it was what led me to actually go to a larger firm, get educated, get licensed, ultimately become a financial advisor for the first 5 years of my career. Um, and I fell in love with this business, and I fell in love with my colleagues. I was not personally cut out for it. I learned a lot being a financial advisor, but I loved this industry and I loved working with financial advisors, which what ultimately led me to LPL in 2003. Is I was not the best financial advisor in the world. I struggled with taking home. This is like something I also admire so much of you, Jen, is you take home your clients' struggles. You have a client who is markets are down and they're worried about their retirement, or they've lost a loved one. They've got a sick spouse. You're dealing with this emotion of your clients, and I know it impacts you so much. So you not only have to play psychologist and confidant for these folks, but you also own a lot of the emotional challenges that they're going through too. And that is, yeah, you're really good at helping people meet their goals, but you do an incredible job, you and your contemporaries, of helping through people through the hardest times of their lives.
Thank you so much for sharing that because it's true. We're very heart-centric in what we do, and it rips my heart out when a spouse passes away from a couple that I've had for decades as a client, right? It's so heart-wrenching and you care so much and you want to be there for that person in every way that you can be. Obviously, helping them financially get to where they need to be, helping them pick up the pieces after someone passes away. Yeah, I'm so grateful to do what I do, to where I do it, and to be able to have such an honor to be able to lean in and help people financially wherever we can. I don't take that lightly. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, well, I know how much impact you have on their lives. And like I said, it isn't just, hey, don't sell at the bottom or buy at the top. It's helping them through being a widow, or helping them through, heck, what I'm about to be, an empty nester, which it's not so sad, but it's a little sad.
That's a big transition. That's
It's
a
a
big
big,
transition
yeah. Well,
too.
that's the word, right? You help people through life's most challenging or exciting transitions, right? New baby, wedding, divorce, death, new job, moving to a new town, having the kids move out. Life's big transitions require guidance. And I think a lot of folks think that you're helping them, get upside capture and reduce downside risk. And what you're really helping them do is through each one of those big moments that matter.
Yeah, we're here for every season, right? Every season of life.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being raw and vulnerable and sharing your personal insight. I appreciate it so much. So as we begin to wrap the conversation, I always like to ask, what are tips and or tricks that you use to utilize money differently in your own household?
Yeah, this is, like I said, I am a work in progress.
We all
And
are.
I always try to get a little bit better. But one thing I heard the other day has been really powerful for me. It's actually from a gentleman, Will Gadara, who was the owner of what was known as the best number one rated restaurant in the world, 11 Madison Park in New York. He's got a wonderful book called Unreasonable Hospitality. And he talks about, it's a fantastic book if you're just trying to better serve people. But one of the things in that book, unrelated to better service of folks, is living by a 95-5 rule. And this one has been incredibly helpful to me. And the 95-5 rule in regards to your finances goes as follows. 95% of your decisions and 95% of your assets, you make the most thorough, thoughtful, balanced, and long-term decision you possibly can. And the other 5%, you do whatever the heck you want to do. You have fun, you go on the trip, you buy the expensive bag, you go to the really nice restaurant that you've always wanted to go to, and you just be okay with we're foodies, my wife and I. We love a good restaurant. And there's a wonderful restaurant called Addison here in San Diego that we've wanted to go for years. Wait list, it's a 3-star Michelin restaurant. Wait list is forever. We finally went for an anniversary, and I just said to my wife, I'm like, this is part of the 95-5. However, I still emotionally can't handle it. So I'm going to have them give you the bill. I don't want to see it, and I don't want to know about it. Because otherwise I can't enjoy this experience. And so I had to both live into the 95-5, but then also, use a couple of little tricks to make sure that you don't miss the experience. How terrible would it be to go to this unbelievable restaurant, to have this unbelievable experience, and the whole night be stressing about how much it cost, even though I knew we could handle it, stressing about how much it cost. And I have to, and I'm sure some of us have to, go from this environment or this history of living in scarcity and move to a world of abundance, and live within your means, but live to your means, whatever that means, and enjoy the work and enjoy the fruits of our labor, because life is short and we work hard. And if we can't create and share some joy together, what's the point?
1,000,000%. No, I love that. I love everything about that. And I'm like shaking my head yes, because I am also a work in progress on many of the things that you're talking about.
My wife would tell you I'm a work in progress in many other areas as well. And you could do a whole podcast on that. I'm sure a lot of folks would enjoy that. It would be a little bit painful for me, but that one in particular, I'm making strides, as well as wiping the counter every time I feed the dogs. That's another area where I'm focused on.
Happy wife, happy life, right?
I'm trying.
Well, thank you so much for making time today. I so appreciate it.
Hey, Jen, it was so fun to be here. Thank you for having me.
And hopefully those of you watching and or listening will join us on the next Platinum Talks Wealth podcast.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, Platinum Talks Wealth, please subscribe and share. For more information about Jennifer Rogers Markwell or Platinum Wealth Management, please visit www.platinumwealth.net. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA and SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. The guest speakers and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Platinum Wealth Management.